All right, I'm David Watkinson of allreality.com, and I'm at the International Remote Viewers Association Conference in Las Vegas, and one of the very well-received speakers was Graham Nichols, who is a premier out-of-body expert who's done had many experiences with out-of-body, and we've prevailed upon Graham to speak with one of the other speakers, and why don't you explain what's going to be discussed and who you're going to talk to?
I'm going to be speaking with Eben Alexander, and we're going to discuss the crossover between out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, and also look at some of the insights that Eben has gained from his near-death experience in relation to my out-of-body experiences. I've been having experiences of leaving my body since I was around 12 years old, and at around 14 I learnt to induce them intentionally, and I've been researching and developing technology that helps other people induce them since that time.
I'm Dr. Eben Alexander, and had a near-death experience 5.5 years ago, back in 2008, that showed me very clearly that everything I'd come to learn about brain, mind, and consciousness over 20 years was false, and that soul, consciousness, spirit is something that exists very profoundly in its own right. I wrote a book about my experience called Proof of Heaven, a neurosurgeon's journey into the afterlife.
Well, I'll start off. How do you see the differences between an out-of-body experience and a near-death experience in that sense? What are your thoughts on the subject?
Well, I think they have a lot of similarities. Near-death experience, in my view, is simply the kind of natural first stage of the death experience, but one in which we come back. And of course, in an out-of-body experience, one goes out of body and also, in most circumstances, comes back. So I would say there are a lot of similarities, although the near-death experience, by being part of that initial transition process of leaving the physical body once and for all and getting back to the spiritual realm full force, is one that often really allows the veil that I think exists between us and our kind of higher soul and the soul that we reunite with between lives, at the time of death of the physical body, can be, in some circumstances, more profound in terms of getting away from this material earth on which we live, and even outside of this entire universe. Although that can also happen, of course, with out-of-body experiences.
I guess in your talk last night, you were talking about the whole idea of the brain almost like a receiver of consciousness. And I guess my idea, when I think of a near-death experience and I think of an out-of-body experience, I tend to think that as the senses are shut down, or our awareness of the physical world diminishes, we can then access that larger consciousness, or access that sense of consciousness, and then maybe go into something like an out-of-body experience. And I wonder if the near-death experience essentially is when that process goes to its fullest extent and we're able to access that full spectrum of consciousness in the most pure way, in a way. Does that resonate with how you...
I would say very much that's the case. What my journey showed me clearly, and this was especially a gift of having a severe bacterial meningitis, which I would say is one of the most perfect models for human death because of the way that it primarily attacks and destroys the neocortex, the outer surface of the brain, the part that makes us human. And having spent all that time in neurosurgery and having thought that I understood a mechanism of brain-mind consciousness, my experience showed me very clearly that it was completely wrong, that consciousness is something that exists primarily. In fact, I would say consciousness is at the very foundation of all of this material realm, and it's what generates it all and lets it all emerge. And of course, by being conscious beings, we're kind of living in that emergent realm that consciousness constructs. And we're so immersed in it, it's kind of like asking a fish what it's like to be in the water. But the important thing for people to realize, and a lot of neuroscientists, a lot of people who study brain-mind consciousness, the whole mind-body discussion that's been going on for more than 2,600 years, realize that the model that was so prevalent in the 20th century in neuroscience, that the brain creates consciousness, doesn't seem to come together at all. The general thinking was that consciousness is somehow a result of the complexity of the human brain, of 100 billion neurons, and each one with 10,000 connections on average. It's something about that complexity leads to the emergence of consciousness from physical matter. And yet we realize, the more we study the brain, that that is not the case at all. And that a much better model is really, as you mentioned, the transceiver, or I prefer the filter theories, as they're called, that the brain is a reducing valve or a filter that limits consciousness down, and in fact it limits it down to this little trickle of information, which is our conscious awareness here in these physical bodies. And it creates this illusion of here and now that is very much illusory, and I think that that's an important thing to understand. But the essence of it for near-death experiences and for out-of-body experiences, things like that, is to realize what we are doing is by kind of, in a sense, disconnecting from our sensory inputs and also from the information processing aspects of the neocortex. We actually can release our conscious awareness to be much more in touch with that infinite universal consciousness. And I believe that's what happens in near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. And there's a tremendous amount of evidence for non-local consciousness, which is that kind of process. And that would include things like reincarnation, the stories of past life memories in children, that kind of thing, that really shows very profoundly that the brain does not create consciousness at all. And I believe that is what we're getting to. And for me personally, it was really a journey of coming from that conventional scientific thing, you know, brain creates consciousness, what is known as reductive materialism, that says that if you reduce everything down to subatomic particles, electrons, protons, quarks, neutrons, photons, then understand the laws that bind them together, then build up physics, chemistry, biology, you can understand everything about the universe. And what I came to realize after my near-death experience is that conventional science of reductive materialism is absolutely mute on anything having to do with the generation of consciousness by the physical brain. Nobody has a clue. It's something called the hard problem of consciousness. And it's not because we haven't done the research, or that if we do enough research someday we'll get there. The more research we do, the more we realize the brain is not creating consciousness. And I think the enigma of quantum mechanics has been trying to tell us that for a century or more, that in fact consciousness is primary in all of this universe, and there's no way to even begin to say you have a theory of everything or an understanding of reality without a much more robust understanding of the nature of consciousness and what it is.